My special guest today is Brian Mandelbaum. He is the co-founder and CEO of the Fintech and data platform Klover. Klover's mission is to unlock a free financial ecosystem for consumers using a new asset type, data. Prior to Klover, Brian was the founder and CEO of the data-driven marketing technology company Clearstream, which sold to Engine in 2015. He's been widely regarded as an expert in MarTech and the emerging zero-party data privacy landscape. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
Well, can you just get started and give us a little bit about your background and how you came to work at Klover?
Yeah, I spent the early part of my career in the advertising industry. So, grew up in New York, went to school in New England, came back to New York, and worked for some of the most traditional ad agencies in America, who's still around today, and really cut my teeth in what was back then the digital advertising ecosystem. So when you were seeing banner ads on your local publisher to the messages you got in email, I was doing that in 1999. I consider
Wow.
myself a dinosaur in the world of digital advertising. I've been doing this for that long, and I'm relatively young. At least I think I am. And I started uh, the thinking to myself, wow, there has to be a better way. And the reality is my degree is in computer science, and I always think about how can I engineer things to be more efficient, more favorable, and most importantly, uh, better serving to whoever my end user is. So I left the services side of the industry, the agency side, and I started this company, Clearstream, and it really was sort of my passion, which has always been around data, which is what brings it to Clover. And it was about how can I create a platform for marketers to be able to really distribute the creative that they're developing on video, whether that was on your mobile device, your desktop, even the new versions of the connected televisions, the smart TVs you see today, but all based on decisions that the data does on its behalf. And that proved to be quite a successful endeavor. We grew that business. We started in 2011, late 2011, and we grew that to well over $100 million business in the course of 3 or 4 years. And obviously, ultimately exited the business in 2015, like you mentioned in the introduction. How we got to Clover was really a a sort of canary in the coal mine that I saw in my last business, Clearstream, which was around consumer privacy and data. And we thought to ourselves, wow, there's things like regulation in European Union called GDPR. Not sure if your listeners have heard about it, but it really does talk about very particularly the types of data that companies, doesn't matter if you're a marketer or a bank, just the type of data that companies can collect from consumers. And most importantly, it's not the data that they're collecting, it's actually the use case of that data and really getting permission, express permission from that consumer. And most importantly, on top of that, I keep saying things are important, but it is the amping of importance, the rights to delete that data. So it really is harnessed around how do we ensure consumer privacy and safety. Saw that happening in Europe while I was actively in the Clearstream business and operating it as the CEO. And there was a lot of talk around what's going to happen in the United States. And I consider the United States to be the largest data economy. From there, California had been talking very actively around something called CCPA, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act. And that really protects consumers just like GDPR does in the European Union. So if you fast forward to where I thought the market was going to be, which is kind of where we are today, you see a world where privacy is at the forefront. Companies like Cambridge Analytica sort of spearheaded this movement, what happened in the 2016 election and the leaking of data. And I said to myself, wow, if data is going to be regulated and it's going to be more scarce, there ought to be a value to that data. Because back then, in my last business, it was the Wild West. There was no regulation, and I'll admit it, there are plenty of cases where perhaps ethics violate the need for commercial viability. But I'm now a big supporter of what privacy is doing for consumers and empowering consumers to be able to be authentic with what they're sharing with the partners they're sharing with, whether that's your local grocery store or Tide detergent. It doesn't really matter. So how we think about the world is, if privacy is important, which we think it ought to be, then it means that your data that you're sharing should be valued more importantly. And if that's the case, what can you do and reimagine in certain markets and marketplaces that make consumers more beneficial for sharing of that data? And we do that through unlocking basically the financial ecosystem that has generally been milking consumers with fees and costs for centuries, not decades, centuries, for as old as the banking institutions existed. There's always been fees and commissions and things like that. And we use the data as truly the way that monetizes the consumer with express permission from that consumer to be able to do that.
So you've taken this idea of the data's valuable, and if privacy is important, consumers should benefit from that, and you've built this platform, Clover, where you can monetize the value of your own data to get financial services. Can you talk a little bit more about those financial services? Like, what are the benefits that a user of your app gets in return for being honest and sharing a little bit about themselves?
Great question. And let me take a step back and tell you why we care about financial services as it predicates to data. So if you think about like a traditional marketing funnel, and a lot of your listeners may or may not be familiar with the marketing funnel, it's like it's essentially a decision tree a consumer goes through before they make a purchase. And what we realize is that not all data is created equal. Whether you're a male or a female is worth X. And whether you're interested in you're interested in sports is worth Y. And if you're want to buy tickets to a Red Sox game, that's worth A. And you're going down the funnel. And as you go down the funnel, the value goes up. What we realized is that when commerce happens, that is the most valuable data set to a lot of companies. It's where the cash register rings and where the rubber hits the road and actual real value is created. So how we got to the financial world was by happenstance. I'm not a fintech expert. I'm probably the first person that you brought onto your show that really hasn't built their career in fintech. I come from a marketing background, but we landed in fintech because it was the data that is the most valuable to consumers for things to unlock. And we realized that going into it. So how we think about the world of fintech and the products that we give to consumers essentially for free are things like access to consumer advances. So getting access to your paycheck early. There's 70% of the American population has less than $400 in their bank account. Everybody knows that stat. It's been widely said by the Fed as well as a lot of the press. We give consumers access to that for free. So you can get your wages early. You also can get traditional banking products like a checking account, a debit card, a savings account. And we're launching things around traditional credit products like credit cards, and we're expanding into things like investing. The most important thing that grounds everything that we do is we try and strive to give that to consumers 100% for free. And the way that we care about making money is really about turning the commercial data that you're generating inside of our tools as the path to the economic incentive.
Can you give me an example of, like you say, being closer to the transaction, it creates more valuable marketing data? Can you bring
Mhm.
it home and say, like, tell me about a user of your platform and how what types of information is useful for an advertiser that you can monetize?
Well, the most basic example is competitive data. So if you live in the Northeast, there's probably a strong prevalence to consumers who drink coffee at Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts.
Hmm.
Does not matter to us. But if you live in the Northeast, that's where the market is won and lost on those two major brands. Starbucks can work with us and really identify consumers who are drinking Dunkin' Donuts on a daily basis, a weekly
Ah,
basis, a monthly basis,
I see.
and understand how to market to them. And they can market to us inside of our banking platform. So think of a bank. Picture a bank. for those who are listening, where the bank didn't charge fees, but the bank is now a publisher. They are now content. And when content is the monetization path, what happens to that bank? That's really what Klover has turned themselves into, which is the ability to be able to take these types of commercial signals and use it for marketers in whatever way that they deem appropriate, while maintaining the utmost and strictest privacy. We never share personal information. Andrew's data, Brian's data, nobody's data ever crosses the transom to another party. It's all housed inside of our ecosystem, and it's bank level security and all the things that you expect from a bank. It's just used to activate your data more appropriately and effectively. So that's one example of using our platform.
It just lit up for me because I run the marketing department at Intrinio, and if you could tell me which, give me any information about the people who put financial data on their credit card in the last month, I would be over the moon because that's the transaction. Who buys financial data? Because that's what my company sells. So if you're Dunkin' Donuts or you're Starbucks, who's buying the competitor's brand? Who's buying ours? That information is priceless. And I love the idea that you flip this on your head. As a traditional person out on the internet, I'm bombarded. I'm kind of feel taken advantage of. I don't really actually know where my data is going. And I wouldn't mind telling people what coffee I drink if they gave me a choice and a benefit in return. So now I get it. It's like, oh yeah, the light bulb went off. It makes so much sense. Um, and that value that you can create for your users is it popular with them? Does it make sense? I mean, are they excited about it? As excited as I just became?
I think they are, because I believe that we know they are because of the positive reviews we get on the app stores and the letters we get from consumers where we're changing lives. We're really attacking an element of American society right now that is underbanked, thinly banked, or non-banked. They're
Mm,
just getting screwed.
yeah.
And we're delivering something to them that they have never actually seen before. And the way to get financial mobility, or actually, the best way to describe it is the way to access financial freedom is to create mobility. And we define mobility here at Clover as two ways: helping consumers save money or make money. If we're
Mm,
doing two of those things in concert every single day, we believe we are systematically creating a level of financial freedom that they didn't have before. And this is what this data truly does. Now, the common misconception is, if consumers are looking to monetize their data differently, are they the right consumers? Are those the consumers that actually marketers and brands care about? Well, the reality is that in the market we live in, it's still the what drives the economy truly is these types of consumers. I mean, we see almost $200 billion of commercial activity coming through our platform on an annual basis. That is a huge portion of the GDP.
wow. Yeah, that's very impressive. I mean, and if 70% of folks, they have a very small amount of savings, that's the vast majority of the country that is in this situation,
and
right?
and getting worse with inflation.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not an economist. I never claimed to be one, but it's actually becoming, we're sort of counter cyclical in
Mm,
how our business model is set up, because when times are tough and people are on more budgets,
mm.
I think consumers are looking for ways that they can be more efficient in their daily life, and we definitely solve for that.
Yeah, I've read the reviews on your landing page, getklover.com, Clover with a K, or join Clover rather with a K. I read some of the reviews, and it's easy to see what a super personal benefits you get. The reviews are like, "Hey, I was short a little bit. I needed to buy a plane ticket for an emergency, or I had to get a cab for my dad." And I read that, and I was like, "This is so impactful for the individuals who were in a pinch. They had nowhere else to go." It's very relatable to understand like the level of panic and fear that you might feel that Clover can resolve. I mean, did you get a kick out of that? Do you feel like you're making a difference in these people's lives, like that they actually are getting a lot of help out of the app?
It's the only thing we care about. We are
Right.
so consumer focused. Everybody at this company has to spend at least one a day a month talking to consumers
Mm.
and really understanding their. I don't care if you're an engineer or you're obviously our customer service team is tremendous and the lifeblood and the most important part of our company. But if you're an engineer, a product person, a salesperson, the accounting department, we want people to understand what our customers go through every single day to truly be able to internalize how we can benefit them going forward.
Yeah, that's a very authentic mission and purpose. You not only care about privacy and and helping folks to protect their own data, but also you're making a difference for a segment of the population that might be unbanked or underserved. And I do the same thing. Most of our team has gone through chat support or
Yep.
some sort of understanding the challenges that our customers face, and it makes a huge difference. So I'm sure you've got a very engaged team over there. Can you talk a little bit about is this what you mean by zero party data? This is the data that is being shared.
Let's break down what the types of data there are. We can get to zero party data. So there's really three parts of data or three elements of data that we can categorize. There's something called third party data. Third party data is essentially broker data. I purchase data from Experian, who's a credit bureau, and be able to use that to augment information I know about myself or you, Andrew. That is probably going away because of privacy. Now, if Andrew did not give Experian permission to sell the data to Brian, that should not happen. But that is a data that still exists and it's very prevalent. The problem with third-party data is one, you don't know where it came from. Two, you don't know if it's actually accurate. And number three, you don't really technically have permission to use it in a lot of cases. Then there's a concept called first-party data. I won't go into second-party data. That's a little bit more nuanced. But first-party data, which is where a brand or a company has the ability to collect or glean data from a consumer. Great example is you go to the New York Times, you visit the website, or you have the app, and you like these articles. You start reading articles about sports. You start reading articles about politics. They're basically building a profile on you that they own. It's in their privacy policy that they use this data for whatever cases that they're trying to do, but it's not expressed. It is more implied that they're using this information. It is in the policy. It is completely legal. I'm not going to debate whether or not that is ethical or not because it's powering the experience on New York Times. And some people could argue that it's for the better. It's making that product work better for the consumer. What zero party is in particular is the clear and present value exchange of a consumer giving data and getting something for giving that data. It is going one level deeper than what first party is. The consumer knows straight up what the value exchange is. In a lot of cases, it might just be getting a product or a service for free. In a lot of cases, it could be just paying somebody for data. I actually think that a focus group, the 60s, 70s, 80s version of a focus group where you're sitting in a fluorescent lit conference room eating Doritos and Funyuns, talking about what you like and not like and information about yourself is the earliest form of zero party data. You signed your life away, you
Yep.
went in the room, they gave you a check for $75 and you ate Funyuns and drank Pepsi and you talked about a bunch of stuff. That's zero party data. That's what we are. We are pioneering this new category in the digital sense, and it is all very expressly shared.
Yeah, while you were talking about the other kinds of data, I was thinking about like being in grade school and someone trying to teach me about right and wrong, and like, does it feel right? It doesn't feel right to go to a website and oh, I accept your cookies, and yeah, of course I agree to your terms and conditions, but I don't really have time to read them. Like that doesn't feel right. So like, I know you're not gonna debate it or anything, but I think I can pretty safely say that like my kindergarten teacher would say if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. But the idea of, hey, I signed up for this, giving the information freely, that feels fine. It's express consent. And in my experience, when they feel right and they're ethical like that, they do tend to win out. So I think you're pioneering the right thing.
And it's the fidelity of the information you get because of that,
Oh,
right? If
yes.
the that's actually another order of
with it.
magnitude that
Yeah.
the consumer is an active participant. They're actually not, they're not apathetic. They're not being cagey.
Yeah.
They understand the quid pro quo that is
Yeah.
happening in this exchange.
That has to really appeal to advertisers, right? Is that like these people gave us this information. They said they drank this coffee and they preferred Doritos to Pepsi or whatever. Like, do the advertisers see that value, and then it allows them to say, yes, this is great data. This is the data that I would rather use to market.
There's two elements that make it so powerful to advertisers. One, it's the clarity of that data, and two, it's the ESG impact of using this type of data versus using the icky data that we were talking about that didn't feel right earlier. And it's solving for apathy.
hmm Yeah. So these advertising big companies buying ad data and things like that. Somebody is starting to catch up to them and saying, what's your carbon footprint? Are you ethical? And when they say, well, we're buying these data sets that are not, we didn't get permission for, and we're using it, they don't want to be in that position, because when they get found out, regardless of the legality of it, people are going to say that feels icky. I don't like it. But if they can say, yeah, we used this, and not only did we get it permission and people gave us this information freely, but then that company that we were buying that data from went on to provide great banking services with the money, they must feel pretty good about that.
That's all we strive to do.
Yeah, okay. So you're a nice guy. That's good to hear. You've got your heart in the right place.
We try to
That's
make money
good.
at the same time, but
Yep.
that is our mission.
No, it's great. That's the trifecta, where you've got you're doing good, and you're providing benefit for both sides of the transaction and making money at the same time. That makes a lot of sense. So you're a pioneer in this industry. Where's it going? Are other companies following along behind you?
We're starting to see a trend of businesses address consumers in a zero party aspect. We're seeing advertisers get leaned into wanting to do things more zero party or at least first party. Third party is really becoming passe. That's a dinosaur term. They don't want to be involved in it. They're worried about what the impacts are. They don't want to have legal responsibility and liability. They're asking us questions like, where are you sourcing the data? How do you source the data? These are good things that marketers are leaning into, and companies, to make sure that they are executing and activating the most ethical way possible. There are companies out there that have been, frankly, doing this in different ways for a very long time, just not in the corner of the ecosystem that we are in, which is the fintech world. But like the earliest form of that is essentially email. Like if you think about like what email was in the early or mid 90s, you used to pay for email, right? You had an AOL account, a Prodigy account, your local internet service provider. I'm dating myself. There's all this stuff that I went into. And then you got things like Google coming out with Gmail, and Microsoft had Hotmail, and Yahoo has Yahoo Mail, and they're giving away email for free. You're not paying $9 a month, $19.99 a month, or whatever it is for the service and the email addresses that come with it. It's free, and they're monetized through this value exchange where they're using the data. Now, that wasn't zero party. That was more first party. But the reality is that those models have always been existing. But you are seeing companies start to think about not just the fintech, not just the email side. It's about creating, Web3 experiences where you have your data in a wallet. So using the blockchain, putting your data onto the blockchain, thinking about the blockchain as the way of activating whatever the experience you have, where the data actually never leaves your wallet. It's just being essentially looked at momentarily to make a decision. And you're seeing all of the large publicly traded companies out there, like the Googles of the world, think about how they can respect and create a more privacy compliant process to delivering experience online. A lot of it's because of regulations coming. Two is they don't want to get in trouble with the DOJ. They're trying to ensure that they have a long-term solution for a problem that's been existing for the past 10 years. And they're doing things around getting rid of cookies. So getting closer to zero party data by just getting rid of the element of a cookie or a device identifier on your Android phone or your iOS. and using everything that's local as the way of deciding who is going to see what and why they're going to see it.
Yeah. So the industry, the big players are moving along with you, and
Correct.
they might not necessarily be in fintech, but the world is heading this way, and that feels good.
Correct. And in a world where there's no cookies, I don't know if people are familiar with like how a cookie works. And I can briefly explain it. It's just a fingerprint of data on your mobile browser or your laptop or desktop that tells a marketer or a publisher if they've seen you before and what do they know about you. And all that stuff has gone away over the past 3 years. So they really come in having no information about you at all. And what's interesting about the fintech world is that you don't need cookies to really understand if somebody bought something. If you buy something at Best Buy, in store, at your local store, down the block, you bought a pack of batteries, whether you bought that online or whether you bought that in store at that local location, the commonality will never be a cookie. The commonality actually is in a cashless society, your bank account, your payment method. And that is void of having to use all of those signals that we've lost in the past.
Yeah. So it's a perfect place to apply this mentality. Um, and I think that it sounds like it's really working. I mean, just telling from the folks on your website, what are you going to build next for your users? Like, what other benefits can you add for them from the financial aspect that will make your platform even more appealing?
What we think about like stickiness is, an appeal is creating products that consumers are going to want to use daily, weekly, and monthly. And we've sort of built the banking platform, which we're really in the early stages of, the checking account, the debit account, and the savings account. So we're really starting to focus for the remainder of the year of rolling that out across all of our users. And we've got millions of users on our platform right now. So that's one element that's putting a lot of our attention from our product team and our engineering team. And then we're going to focus on the revenue that you're going to generate from being able to bank with us. We're basically paying you to bank with us. It's because it's free, and figure out a way to elongate your savings, really grow the amount of money that you're creating, whether that's investing in traditional equities uh, or fixed income products, crypto assets, whatever that might be. We're actually going to leave that up to the consumer to decide. But what we really want to do is create an ability for them to have a resiliency in the money that they have in their savings account. So if 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and have less than a few $100 in your checking account, we want to have an impact on that. The best way that we're successful is that perhaps you don't need us anymore.
Right. Yeah, you could go off and have a different banking experience, but in the meantime, you're building anything and everything you can think of to help folks make money and save money within the
Yeah, and on
platform.
a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Those are the things, those are the cadences we think about in product.
Is that because like the way I interact with my bank is like maybe I go deposit a check once a month and then once a week I check my balance, and is that kind of how consumers interact with their bank?
It is, but it depends on how much money you have in the bank. Here's the interesting
Mm,
factor. If you have a huge safety net of savings, you're probably not checking your bank account more than once a month. And that's really to do like perfunctory transactions like paying a bill here and there and things like that. But when you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're navigating through that cycle from one paycheck to the next, our consumers are checking their accounts on a weekly or if not daily basis. They are literally navigating the week, and their bank account is a peer into their wallet. It's like checking the folds of your wallet or in your purse of how many bills are in there so that you can figure out whether or not you can afford a car repair, make an investment, school loans, things like that. So we try to create value in those experiences too.
yeah. That sounds stressful to be checked. If you are living paycheck to paycheck and you're checking all the time, it's almost like the app is reassuring you and helping you get through the stress of not having a large amount of savings.
We're essentially paying you to check the app on a regular
Yeah,
basis.
right. Can you talk about the gamification aspect? I see a lottery or like I can win money, I can earn points. Like, tell me a little bit about that system.
Yeah, we have the philosophy that we want to make it useful. You got to teach behaviors. And the only way you really teach behaviors is by creating sort of carrots and sticks. Carrots and sticks are essentially, if it's a behavior that we think is not for your financial well-being, we'll try to demonstrate that that's not something that you should do on a regular basis. Like, you shouldn't spend X, if you can save Y. But carrots are rewarding people for really good behaviors, and also you can reward them in a couple of ways. We reward them through essentially giving them real value. One of that value can be in the form of points. So very much like a game. Like, the more data you share with us, the more points you get. Those points can be redeemed for cash. You also can get cash back on every purchase that you make, and the way you do that is being able to claim those purchases so that we can verify that you actually made that purchase. And that gives the consumers the ability to not want to go into their bank account and see sadness or see stress. They see an opportunity that comes from every single thing they're doing, because really it is truly opportunity. It is net new money to this consumer on a regular basis. And we want to be able to teach that positive behavior because it can get them into that financial freedom category.
It sounds fun. you know, right? Like it's stressful not to have any money, but if you're involved in a system where you're making money for interacting with it, and that sounds like you're transforming my stress into something more enjoyable.
It's a gig. Think of it as a gig.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Um, well, the website is joinclover with a K.com. It looks like it's in the App Store. It's on Google Play, and it sounds like it's transforming the world of data. So it was really awesome to hear about it. Thanks for being on the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.